Animesh Kumar, Chief People Officer of Z Entertainment Enterprises Limited, one of the leading media and entertainment powerhouses in the world. A very good morning to one and all present here. I, on behalf of Team Hriday, welcome you all to Gyanoday, the opening ceremony of Anveshan 2020, Forging Connect, sponsored by Deccan Chemicals Limited. Anveshan is one of the largest HR business symposiums conducted by any B school in the country. It is the flagship event of Hriday, the HR club of Goa Institute of Management. Hriday offers a plethora of events under the banner of Anveshan, starting with Gyanoday, the keynote address by the speaker, Samiksha, the national live HR case study competition, Margdarshan, the industry mentorship simulation program, Inquisitive, the national HR quiz competition, and Yukti, a certified workshop. All of these events have been designed in a way that they have a flavor of the theme. This year being the 8th iteration of Anveshan, we have associated with big names in the industry. We have Deccan Fine Chemicals as our title sponsor, Primerica as our associate sponsor, TopSim as our simulation partner, People Matters as our media partner, Safe Express as our official supply chain partner, Tangentia as our technology partner, Herald as the print media partner, Human Capital as the knowledge partner, Mac Hotels as our hotel partner, Gastronet, Brood Black, the chocolate room as our food and beverage partners, Big FM as our radio partner, and the Soul Store as our official gifting partner. Let us now begin the event with the customary lighting of the lamp ceremony. I request our speaker, Mr. Animesh Kumar, to kindly come up on stage along with Professor Naga Venkatesh, the placement chair, to light the lamp. Representing the students, we have Nikita from Senior Core Committee Member Hriday and Meghraj, Junior Core Committee Member Hriday. Thank you all. I now invite Professor Naga Venkatesh to come up on stage and share a few insights and set the tone for Anveshan 2020.
Good morning to all of you. A warm welcome to our chief guest, Mr. Anvesh Kumar, the CPO of Z Entertainment, to all the participating teams who are here with us, and more importantly, the Gimites. It gives me a pleasure to welcome you all to this season of Anveshan. While our team members have already explained, this is a kind of a signature event as far as GIM is concerned, especially for the HR fraternity. The event has been designed for the purpose that the HR folks at GIM tend to get groomed to connect with the external world while they're still in the campus. And before I talk about the topic, I thought it's important for me to talk a bit about our chief guest, Mr. Anvesh. Anvesh, an exceller and a hardcore Jamshedpur resident, right now is a pan-India personality, comes with about 3 decades of functional experience across marquee brands like Marico, ABN AMRO, Stancy, and IDFC. Anvesh, as a core HR professional, has demonstrated the core competence of dealing with change management by moving across organizations with different cultural backgrounds across sectors. He defied the convention and designed a new career journey for himself. Now, moving on to this year's theme, Forging Connect, I would like to share a couple of questions to help you to discover the answers. I hope that will make it intriguing and interesting. When we look at the theme per se, it's apt given the context that the digital world unfurls offering digital careers for the digital natives. But then the fundamental question which I want to raise here, would it be a smooth sail for the digital natives? Are there stumbling blocks? But for them to get baptized into the corporate world, what kind of personal transformation should they be aiming at? And what kind of issues should they be focusing upon while they are still on the campuses? To begin with, I want to touch upon the gig work, which is a buzzword across both on the corporate world and in the campuses. To begin with, it sounds interesting and aspirational, but it comes with a couple of questions. What about job and financial security? The second thing that I would want to touch upon is, given the context of social culture or the social systems that we have in our country, how would you deal with the social pressure coming in from the rest of the world if you were to choose to become a gig? And more importantly, given the context that India has a talent demand and supply mismatch, what would be the implications of alternating careers between gig to a regular job? Have you thought about it? If you've not, maybe it's time for you to think about it. And my suggestion is, it's important for you to make an informed career-risking choice at this stage as to which zone you would want to play your cards. Is it in the gig world or in the regular career, or you want to swap between multiple areas? The first and fundamental thing that I want to talk about when we talk about the digital careers is about ethics. When most of you are in the campuses, the typical thing which happens with our ethics course is it's one of the courses that we will breeze through, but the fact here is, ethics, do they assume more importance in the digital world that we are in? In fact, if you were to look at the research which is coming out, more than anything else, be it the strategy and the technology, when we talk about the data-driven world, without ethics, the entire edifice collapses. So you may want to think on, where do you stand in terms of your ethical framework? Then, when we talk about a connected world, today when we look at it, we are living in an era which is highly connected and yet very, very disconnected. Let me talk about a couple of perspectives which come in from there. When I look at your generation, or for that matter, our generation or anyone, I see each one of us pouring in lots of data glued to our gadgets. The fact here is, if you're not having time for ourselves, if you're not able to connect with our inner self, can we really start connecting with the external world at large? If you do so, would we be successful as professionals? Maybe a point that you will have to talk about and think about within your batches and teams. Then the other thing which you need to be cognizant of, thanks to the rapid pace of change and the information overload, the fact here is all of you are bound to undergo a lot of stress compared to our generations. So what's your mechanism of self-renewal? Have you thought about it? If not, maybe it's the right time for you to think about it. Having spoken a couple of cautions, you might wonder, is it all a grim scenario? Not really. There are a lot of positives too. A digital world offers you a globally connected world, which means you have the option of pursuing global careers, unlike the previous generations, which were largely India-centric, right? But the question here is, if you want to tap the global careers, how would you need to prepare yourself? Have you thought about it? If not, maybe it's an opportune time to think about it when you're still on the campus. More importantly, now when I move on to the workplace, right, let me begin with the IT industry, which is like the lead industry for us. Today, the top CEOs are now talking about productization of services and service excellence as the core theme. Now, the question here is, as would-be HR professionals and leaders, would you not want to lead or front-end this transformation of converting your HR services into products and bring in your service excellence? Now, when you talk about your success as a HR professional and as a leader, today the business world demands for value creation, for competitive edge and sustainability. How many of you make it a point when you're still in the campus to think about what is the kind of value that you're adding in to your projects and teams when you're pursuing in on the campus? If you're not made that as a part of your DNA, would that be a part of your DNA when you transition into the corporate world? A point of thought for you. Then the next thing that all of you have been hearing about is analytics and information slicing. Analytics and data management is going to be a part of your code deliverable, not just for the big data guys or the tech giggies. So how many of you have actually done a self-assessment of what is your current state of preparedness with regard to data management and slicing of data, right? The typical tendency for most of the students who tend to major with HR is, that's not a cup of tea, we'll outsource it to someone else. No, you can't, unless you're equipped with the code. So better be prepared on that. Then, when we talk about the corporate context, while the technology brings in organizations and teams together, there are still silos because of the corporate politics. While politics are still a way of life in the campus life as well. The question here is, if you're not learning to be agnostic to the politics and be an integrating facilitator while in the campus, would you be able to do that in the corporate world? So the choice that you may have to think about is, would you want to continue the tradition of the old bandwagon of working in silos, or defining a new work environment where people break the silos and the departments and functions, and HR does the catalyst of putting people together and integrating everybody? Now let me talk about the skills. Apart from the analytics and all of that we spoke about, the core skills remain with you, which will help you to succeed are your agility, adaptability, networking, and relationship management. Now, when you talk about agility, in the old format, we used to say that 3 years after you graduate from a B school, your knowledge value becomes zero. But then, when your generation steps out of the campus, believe me, in 6 months, if you're not rejuvenating yourself on a daily basis, your market value will go down drastically because your knowledge and skill will get outdated. So have you thought about as to what is your learning rhythm? It's important for each one of you to discover as to what is your learning rhythm. Some of us subscribe to RSS feeds, some of us subscribe to the daily dossiers, so figure out what is the way and make that as a part of your breakfast habit. Then when we talk about passion for innovation and service excellence, one of the key things which I notice is the digital natives, you guys, are very good at consuming data and demanding for service. But then when you wear the cap of delivering, being a service provider, as a HR professional or as a future leader, do you have that view? If not, maybe it's time for you to think about it. Then I would want to talk about your success quotient, if you want to define that. A digital identity is the key thing. So how many of you have thought about your digital identity? If you've not thought about it, maybe it's an opportune time for you to think as to what kind of digital identity you would want to create for self and nurture if you want to be successful in your careers. Yeah? And when we talk about it, one of the key phenomena that we see on the campus is the buzzwords are we'll see, we'll manage. Yeah, but then this attitude would only help you to win the short sprints, but not the long career innings. Of the thousands of graduates who step out of B-School portals, very few of them make it to the top. So it's your choice that you have to make, whether you want to rise up, battling the career and life, or just be a bystander, not winning the life. Yeah, would like to thank once again Mr. Animesh and all of you for being here. May the best team win. Good luck to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you for your perceptive and wise words, sir. We are privileged to have with us today Mr. Animesh Kumar, Chief People Officer at Z Entertainment Enterprises Limited, as our keynote speaker for Gyanodaya 2020. An alumnus of XLRI Jamshedpur and a dynamic leader with over 25 years of experience, Mr. Kumar has led the HR function at large-scale Indian and multinational companies for over 15 years. In his previous stint, he was associated with the Future Group as Chief People and Transformation Officer, wherein he was responsible for driving the internal transformation. Mr. Kumar has also worked with the IDFC Group for 9 significant years, engaging in various roles like the Head of Human Resources, Marketing Head of IDFC Bank Limited, and the CEO of IDFC Foundation. He has served on boards of various companies and has worked closely with non-profit organizations, helping them enhance their internal capacity to increase their social impact. So we are sure this is going to be an insightful and engaging session. We have been waiting for this session and we look forward to share your experiences as well. I request you to please come up on the stage and deliver your keynote address.
I was hoping that I don't need to get up on stage, but Professor Nagaraj, Professor Padmanabhan, thank you for inviting me, and good morning, ladies and gentlemen. When Goa Institute of Management had reached out and said, would I be open to coming to do an address to all of you, I pretty much jumped at the opportunity. Because you are truly blessed to live in a state and in a city which I think is one of the best parts of this country, both from a physical and natural benefits that it has, as well as culturally. It is the most diverse and probably the most liberal state that we have in our country today. And I would give an arm and a leg to be in Goa. What I have on mind today, and Professor Nagaraj, We haven't spoken, have we, before this, but you will find a lot of resonance in his opening address and what I have to share with you. I don't claim to be an expert. I absolutely don't claim to have anything even closely representing all the good words that were said about me. But I do want to share with you and lay bare my life, my professional career and my professional journey, so that it might offer some insights and some learnings for all of you who are going to be stepping into a career in the next, I believe, all of you graduate by, or a large number of you graduate by end of March, early April. So the entire session, and I was talking to Vedanshi saying, what do you want me to do? And she said, look, just talk about, our theme is Forging Connect, but you could talk about just anything. And to which I've said, rather than talk, I'd like this session to be as interactive as we can make it, so that we have real conversations. And we are not mouthing platitudes and saying all the good things, but as being as open, transparent, and brutal in this conversation about what the real world looks like and is going to be when you step into that in a very, very short time. Before I get there, just a quick introduction. Professor Nagaraj mentioned, I grew up in Jamshedpur, and I think the only place that beats Goa is Jamshedpur in terms of just the place that you could grow up in. And then I was training to be an economist. I started doing economics in class 8, and I did economics till my first year of MA, which was at Delhi School of Economics, because the whole idea was you did 16 years and then you went abroad for your MS and then PhD and so on and so forth. I moved to being an HR professional, or at least chose to be in HR, after being disillusioned by what they call the dismal science. So economics is known as the dismal science, right? Everything starts with ceteris paribus. If all things were constant, blah, 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 blah. So anyway, nothing remains a constant. So at Delhi School, I decided I did not want to follow a career in economics after I'd been studying that for class 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 1, 2, 3, for 10 years. I'd studied economics, and I was, I don't know how many of you are economic students or are interested in economics right now, but yeah, the Harold Domar models and microeconomics and ISLM curves and money supply, all of that. And then I did my human resources after that. I hadn't done a whit of human resources till I joined Excel in 1991. If you had told me when I was in college that I was going to be a human resource professional, I would have laughed at you. Because who does the soft, namby-pamby stuff, right? I'd rather be in finance, being a trader, or in marketing, or in any of those. Didn't want to be in human resources. But once I made the switch, and I've now spent over 25 years, there isn't a single day I've regretted being in human resources, because it's the function that makes the biggest difference to an organization, both to individuals and companies, as well as to organizational capability. And if you spoke to CEOs across the world, including in India, the number one challenge is people, and all aspects of people. How do you motivate people? How do you find talent? How do you get the right sets of skills? How do you build teams? How do you create a culture? You pick the top 5 challenges that CEOs face today. 4 out of those will be in the domain of human resources and people. Because we are complex. Human beings, you and I, are incredibly complex. And therefore, it makes it very difficult to get us to work together. And when you get intelligent people together, that job is made many times harder. There's a famous person who made the quote that getting intelligent people to work together is probably the most difficult thing to do. And he sees his job as hiring people who are more intelligent than him and then getting them to work together. Any guesses who the person is? Sorry? Jack Ma? Absolutely. So Jack Ma made this famous statement about how his job is getting intelligent people to work together. Because when you're able to do that, it makes a huge difference to the company. So HR is, yes, soft and not hard in the classical definition, but I promise you, soft is really hard. It is the most difficult thing to achieve. And building organization, creating institutions, building culture, and all of that. So, without further ado, let me start on taking off from what Professor Nagaraj said. What do you think are the biggest themes that are playing out in the world today? And anybody can go first. If I was to say, what would be the one word that you think captures what's happening or what is projected to happen in the next 3 years, 5 years, a decade, what would that be for you? Sorry? Somebody said something. Advancement. Advancement, yes. What else? Inclusion. What else? Sorry? Digital transformation, absolutely. Emotional intelligence. What else? Analytics, yes. Data and analytics. So AI and machine learning. What is AI? Artificial intelligence. And we'll have a conversation on AI also is now being used as a short form for augmented intelligence. And I would encourage all of you to read this book, Homo Deus. It's a fascinating book that talks about when man becomes God by the guy who wrote Sapiens. Anybody remembers who wrote Sapiens? Yuval Harari. And his second book, Homo Deus, is something that all of you absolutely must read. It talks about how when you're able to augment human capability, that man becomes God, and therefore there's complete breakdown of society. Bit of a dystopian and chilling scenario, but worth reading. Sorry, what else? Anybody? What else are the current buzzwords that are happening? Anybody wants to make another guess? No? Okay. So, a lot of things that you spoke about, a lot of things that Professor Nagaraj spoke about, climate change, machine learning, 5G, right? What is 5G? It's increasing internet connectivity speeds at a level where you can control almost any connected device from any part of the world. So you could be an engineer sitting in India or a software person sitting in Goa and hacking through a centrifuge in Alabama or in any part of the world, if that's the way you were interested. That's a negative side. But the positive side is that you could be sitting in Goa and working anywhere in the world, because connectivity is going to improve at a level where theoretically you could virtually project yourself into an office in New York and be having a conversation with people who are projecting themselves from other parts of the world. So your virtual avatar is available and talking to other virtual avatars from any part of the world. Huge implications for the way work is done. Data privacy, augmented intelligence, global pandemics. We are living through one right now. So there is a huge improvement in mortality rates across the world. People are dying later and later and later. And the contra trend is the emergence of global pandemics. So there was SARS, there was MERS, there was Ebola, and now the coronavirus. So The idea here was to capture the biggest buzzwords, the biggest trends that each one of you is going to be facing as you step into the world. This is your future, it's not mine, thankfully. I'm hopefully going to get to a point where I don't need to contend with all of this, but you will. And you need to be alive to and be very cognizant that this is the world that you are entering. It's a world, anybody, social instability. Over the last 20 years, and largely because of the way our generation has run this world, the rich have gotten incredibly richer, and the poor have gotten poorer, right? But what do you think that means? And I was talking to this morning at breakfast today that the son of an auto driver is now doing a graduation degree. So raising his or her aspiration level, the child, son or daughter, so he or she doesn't want to do the same kind of job that his father did, who was a 5th standard pass or an 8th standard pass. But there isn't any jobs for graduates today in this country. And it's not just one person. Joblessness today is about 8% in the country. 8% on 1 billion people is a very large number. And this is only increasing. So you are going to enter a world where you're going to be the privileged few, but you're going to have to contend with being surrounded by people who are not as privileged. And you will have to deal with that reality and come up with solutions so that society doesn't break down. And there are enough dystopian pictures and movies around breakdown of society. So we could go on and on. The other thing that I wanted to talk about and touch upon a little bit, because this is not something that is spoken about very often, is the sharply reducing attention spans. And you're still in college, so I'm sure you're forced to read books and you're supposed to read long form articles. But in our world, in the corporate world, the biggest challenge that I run into is how do you train people? Getting people to sit in a place and listen to a speaker for more than half an hour is the most important thing, or the most difficult thing that happens. If you write an email that is more than, that goes outside your mobile screen, people say, I didn't read it. Attention spans are dropping. And therefore it has huge implications in the way we educate. It's a huge implication in the way we communicate with each other. What's going to happen to newspapers? And I work in the business of news, right? What's going to happen to newspapers? So, and what's going to happen to everything that is built on the premise that we have the ability to sit and read a 2,000-word article? All education, all communication, internal, in the way work is designed, is all built on that fundamental premise that we have the ability to be focused on something for at least 10 to 15 minutes. Research seems to suggest that that's falling to less than a minute now. With the plethora of news and the plethora of inputs that are coming in, our attention spans are dropping dramatically. What does it mean? And so when I look at this entire list of things that are happening, and I've read not every article, but a lot of articles that try and project the future, that try and give you a guidebook to how to navigate this emerging world, answer the question what the future looks like. And my contention standing here in front of you is that we have no clue. I don't think and I would posit that a lot of people who are currently writing about what the world looks like have a clue as to what the world will really look like. I can promise you that when I started work, and we were the privileged generation because I started work in 1993 when liberalization had just started, so liberalization lifted the whole economy and a rising tide lifts all boats. So my boat was also like lifted really well. And for a lot of us. But if you had asked in 1993 that in 2020, 25 years later, would the world look like the way it is looking today? That digitalization and mobile devices would become the basic framework by which businesses run? I don't think so. Nobody would have predicted this. And the point therefore I'm making is that the emotions that we are dealing with, the emotions that no matter how brave a face we all put out there, is a complex mix of anxiety, of fear, lots of ambiguity, don't know what's going to happen. Clearly there's a huge opportunity. In every change there's a huge opportunity. But the point is that we don't know. And anybody who's telling you that I can tell you with 80% confidence that this is what will happen, I don't think so. And the reason I tell you to read that book, Homo Deus, is because Harari makes a very simple posit. And he says our ability to predict the future is based on our study of the past. So we look at what has happened in the last 25 years and then say, okay, this is likely to happen in the next 25 years. So all statistics, all future predictions are really based on study of the past to predict what's going to happen into the future. Because the future is nothing but incremental past. That's what the world has looked like for the longest time, except at different points in time. So discovery of fire is not an incremental change, it's a discontinuous change, so it changes the way the future looks like. Discovery of electricity. Similarly, he says that the ability to augment intelligence and physical capability. In 5 years' time, how many of you are not good at math? Let's see a show of hands. How many of you don't like math? Okay, that's a few people. And in a business school, if you don't like math, it's a real problem, right? Because everything is math-based. And Harari says that not very far away, we will be able to do neural implants that fixes your math problem. So you will be as good at math as anybody else. And he is envisioning a future which is very similar to, how many of you have seen that movie Matrix? Everybody seen Matrix? Great. So what's the name of the female protagonist in the movie? Remember? The girl who's the counterpart to I forget the name of the actor. Sorry? Yes. So there's a scene where he's caught on the terrace and the bad guys are trying to they've got him cornered, and there's a helicopter there, and she tells the person that she's connected to, I don't know how to fly a helicopter. And he, from wherever Zion is, uploads a program into her brain instantaneously in real time, teaching her how to fly a helicopter. And then she rescues him and the movie moves on. Imagine that world. I know it sounds like, did Animesh smoke something special before he came into this session? I promise you I did not. Because that is the world that Harari talks about. And a lot of other people are talking about. So really coming to this one, and you look at the quotes of some of the leading people in the world, and I'll just walk across and read some of that because I'm sure at that end you're not able to read. So Jeff Bezos says, AI developments as a renaissance and a golden age. Richard Branson Offices will be a thing of the past. Microsoft, Satya Nadella, AI is going to be the next big shift in technology. Sundar Pichai somewhere. Sorry. Sundar Pichai. Impact of AI could be more profound on human development than the discovery of fire and electricity. And both of these have really dramatically shifted human evolution. But look at some of the others. Robert Schiller, you cannot wait until a house burns down to buy fire insurance. We cannot wait until there are massive dislocations in our society to prepare for the fourth industrial revolution. You are the fourth industrial revolution. There's no doubt about it. You will be the people who will experience it and drive it. So you're both the creators and the receivers of this brave new world that we are entering. And there is, I really like Stephen Hawking's quote because it is dark and true to being Stephen Hawking. The development of full artificial intelligence could spell the end of the world. It would take off on its own and redesign itself at an ever-increasing rate. Humans who are limited by slow biological evolution couldn't compete and would be superseded. And there's a whole body of work that's emerging which says, what is the difference between artificial and real intelligence? Like, really, what is it? Your brain is nothing but a massive supercomputer that has evolved over the last 4, 5, 6 millennia. It's similar, except that it is evolving at a rate that is incredibly faster than biological evolution. So, given the change that is happening and our inability to predict what that change will result in, whether it's in the future of work or the future of society or the kind of skills that you need to acquire, what I thought I would share is some truisms which I believe have really helped me in my career, and these have been inflection points. And from where I sit, I see these as lead indicators of success. So if you were to give me a magical ability to get inside each of your brains and figure out how you think on some of these parameters that we're going to talk about, I would be able to say with some degree of confidence which of you are going to be more successful than others 10 years and 20 years down the line. So that's the lead indicator of success for all those people who are statistically oriented. Right? So here goes. When I joined the workforce in 1993, what do you think was the lead indicator of success at that time? Anybody? So in 1993, 10,000 business school graduates coming into the workforce. Each of you has the ability to see inside the head and say, okay, you are required to predict which of these 10,000 people would be the 200 CHROs 20 years out. Okay? How would you do it? What attribute would you look for to base your prediction on? Come on guys, it can't be that difficult. Girls? Knowledge. Okay. What else? Nobody else? Ability to engage strangers in conversation. That's very, very interesting. I haven't heard that before, but it's a great thought. Thank you. What else? I'm sorry? Bridging the gap. Speak a little more. I'm not sure. In 1993, there are no millennials. There are only Gen X and Gen Y. So yes, Gen X and Gen Y at 1993. Ability to adapt, okay? Anything else? personality. So, my hypothesis and my pushback, it was really the ability to speak good English. 1990s, we still hadn't gotten over our hang-ups about color. And I'm talking about being successful in a professional world, not as somebody would be an entrepreneur and things like that. Entrepreneurship was not very large in India at that point in time. So most people who did an MBA went and joined an organization, and then you had to grow within the organization. The language of business within the companies, within corporations, was English. If you could speak good English, you were seen as intelligent. You could have been the dumbest person in the world, but if you could speak English, you were seen as intelligent. More doors were open for you. There was a lot more access that was provided to you. And therefore, English and the ability to speak English was a lead indicator of success. People with the same intelligence level, the person who spoke better English would be more successful. People who had the same IQ levels, the person who spoke English would be better, and so on and so forth. That's why English was the lead indicator of success. So if in 1993, you looked at 10,000 of us, and you could segregate us on people who spoke great English and people who spoke passing English, the people who spoke great English had a higher probability of success. This year, or at this point in time, your ability to work with strangers, your ability to work with people you will never meet, your ability to work with people who don't look like you, who don't talk like you, who don't eat like you, who have a completely different worldview, culturally as different from you as chalk and cheese. Your ability to work with machines, it's that fundamental ability that will determine your success. It's not your intelligence, it's not personality, it isn't how well you speak English, it isn't your IQ, it isn't any of that. It is fundamentally your ability to collaborate. And you know why? When I was growing up, and this is really very far back, my father would send me to buy vegetables. Anybody here from Jamshedpur or is familiar with Jamshedpur? Great. Oh, lots of people. You guys are really privileged. Okay, so you know of Sakchi, right? For those people who have been from Jamshedpur, right? So at that time, laws were not followed so much. So I was 13 or 14 years old. I'd learned how to ride the scooter. So my father told me, go buy vegetables and come. So off I went to Sakchi. And Jamshedpur is this really awesome town in the middle of nowhere. So in the midst of Santhal Pargana district, Singhbhum district, surrounded by tribal communities, is this really awesome town. So this district, on every Sunday morning, people who are producing agricultural produce would come to this market, which in Hindi is known as Haat, because it happens like once a week, for those of you who've never been to a Haat. So once a week on every Sunday, the producers of produce would come to the market, and buyers would go there, and you would roam around, you would pick your vegetables and your fruit and everything, transact and walk away home. You produce, and there's a buyer, and there is 1 degree of separation. Today, most times when you're buying vegetables or buying just about anything, you're doing it on an app, right? So let's look at what happens on an app. You get on an app, so there has to be an app. Somebody has to make an app. Then from the app, you have to make a payment. So there has to be a credit card company, and there has to be a payment gateway. So now there are already 3 people. So there's the app designer, and I'm not even getting into the complexity of doing an app design. But there's a company that's designing an app. There's a company that's got a credit card. There's a company that has now got a payment gateway, right? Now you fulfill your order, and this order goes to the person who's supplying the produce. But the produce is not at your doorstep. You're not physically going there. So the producer is aggregating the produce into some mechanism. So there's an aggregator of produce. The aggregator of produce from various warehouses sends it to Bombay or to Goa. And in Goa, then there are local delivery ecosystems that come and deliver the produce to you. From a 1 degree of separation, you've gone to about 7 degrees of separation, 7 hops before you can get your vegetable or fruit. Is it possible for you to go walk to the local market and buy your fruit? Of course it is. Nobody's challenging that, but we don't do it anymore. And imagine if in this 7-hop step, one person breaks down, or one person says, hey, I don't like this company, I don't like this, or I don't like that, or whatever, not going to do it. Your ability to collaborate is going to be the biggest lead indicator of your success. Any questions? We're supposed to keep this interactive, so happy to answer any questions at any point in time. Sorry, you had a question. Go ahead.
So you said that right now the problem with people is that their attention spans are reducing. And with every generation you see that there are different things that engage a person. That's when a person is engaged. Like you take an infant to engage him, his parents bring different sorts of toys. As he grows up, there are different things that will engage his attention. So I would want to know, like, what are the things that one can do to keep people engaged in a workplace? I think it's really important to keep them engaged so that they participate in whatever is going on in the company. But with time, the things that will engage them will change. So what could be a broad approach to tackle this issue?
Okay. Sorry, what's your name? Sorry?
Jyotirmay from PGP.
Jyotirmay. So Jyotirmay asked me this question as to what we can do to keep people engaged in an era of dropping attention spans. You know, if I had an answer to that question, I'd really be a very rich person because organizations are just struggling with this. There's nothing that we struggle with more than making sure that we are not seeing what is referred to as presentism, where people are physically present, but mentally and emotionally they're just not there. And there's a huge amount of loss that we incur in companies because people come to work, but they're not bringing all of them to work. The answer lies in creating purpose, in having a workplace that allows you to be who you are, creating a workplace that you have friends and you build emotional connections in. So theoretically, the answers are easy. Putting them into practice is where the whole cookie crumbles. So no easy answers, but those are 3 things that we would want to focus on. Most welcome. So delayed gratification, what do you think this is? What does delayed gratification refer to? Nobody? Hi, Shohini.
I think delayed gratification would refer to us being ready for the long-term results and not looking for instant success.
Absolutely.
I want to invest in something. I am aware of the fact that it's not going to happen in the short term, and I will have to put long-term efforts to see some results coming in.
Yes, thank you. That's almost spot on. So Walter Mischel did a research in the 1970s, 80s with a bunch of 4 and 5-year-olds. And the reason he picked 4 and 5-year-olds is because 4 and 5-year-olds don't have the ability to not be normal and natural. They've still not learned the art of subterfuge and putting on appearances that all of us have. So he did a research in Stanford University with 4 and 5-year-olds, And so he had a room, and he would invite a 4-year-old into the room. And when the 4-year-old walked into the room, there was a table and a chair and a one-way mirror, like you've seen in all the movies where these kinds of researches are done. And there was a beautiful marshmallow that was kept on the table. And the child was told that you can have one marshmallow right now, as soon as you walk in. But if you wait for 15 minutes, you can have 2 marshmallows. So double the reward, if you're willing to wait for 15 minutes. And they did this experiment with hundreds and hundreds of kids. So after saying this, the researcher would walk out and he would go stand at this one-way mirror, and you could see kids have responses all the way from some kids would immediately eat the marshmallow, some kids are squirming and like trying to hold on, but eventually giving in and eating the marshmallow. But there were some kids who waited the whole 15 minutes, got the second marshmallow, and then ate both the marshmallows. But the story doesn't end there. They tracked these children for the next 50 years or 60 years. They tracked them for their entire life. And they found that the kids who were able to wait for 15 minutes to eat this and get 2 marshmallows had higher SAT scores, had lower substance abuse, had better relationships and marriages, had lower obesity, better health, more median pay, income as compared to the rest of the group. And therefore, the second attribute that I'd like all of you to really, really think about is your ability to delay gratification. I told you in my life there have been certain inflection points that I believe have contributed to my success or the lack of it. And one of these was in 1996, or 1995 actually. I'd moved to Bombay from Excel. I'd spent 2 years in Bombay, loved the life. I was dating a girl who had just met at that point in time. We'd started dating in February 95. And in July 95, my boss at that point, Jaswant Nair, who was the CHR of Marico, called me to his room and said, Almesh, we've acquired this factory in Pune. Not even in Pune, it was 40 kilometers outside Pune, in a little hick town or a hick village called Saswad. I said, we've acquired this brand Kanmur, or SIL range of foods, which was baked beans, jams, all kinds of food stuff manufacturing. And I'd like you to go to that factory and take over as the factory HR manager, and we need to turn around this entire factory. How many of you would have taken the job? You know, you're in Bombay, you met somebody really interesting, you've just started dating, and you're being asked to move to a factory and a location. Saswad is really hick, believe me. I mean, even today it is very hick. How many of you would take the job? 1? No, I'm being serious. 1, 2, 3, 4, few there, okay? This side, give or take 10%. The 10% who would take that job are likely to be more successful than the rest of you. I'm being facetious, of course, but the point is, in my view, going to that, I took the job. I moved to Saswad. I would come back to Bombay. Luckily, Marico had a 5-day week, so Friday nights I would take a Deccan or one of those Bombay-Pune trains and come back to Bombay and spend time with my girlfriend at that point. And then Sunday night or Monday early morning at 6 o'clock, I would head to Pune. We didn't have the Mumbai-Pune expressway at that time, so you did the train journey. There were lots of benefits of doing that job, no question on that. I mean, I learned a lot more because when 2 years out of college, you run a factory and you sack 200 people, you did all kinds of things. Obviously, there was learning, but the learning is not the critical part. Because I was willing to delay gratification, I built a personal rapport with Jaswant Nair who was a really big name in the HR fraternity at that point in time. I built incredible credibility within Marico. That I was somebody who was willing to do what it takes for the company at the time that it was required. 1 year later, I came back into a job which was the HR manager for the HR and TQM manager for the entire sales organization, which was the largest team in Marico at that point. And the most important team, obviously, reporting directly to the CEO of the sales company, of the sales organization that we had, and in a job that was 2 levels higher than my current grade at that stage. And I think when I look back in my career, and Jaswant has been a defining feature in my life, he's been my mentor in many ways. But when I look back at that decision, it's been an inflection point in my career. It catapulted me into a completely different size and order of job that I was doing compared to my peers. All my peers were growing normally, right? So you did a job, you moved to the next job, and so on and so forth. But the fact that at 3 years out of college, I was leading HR and TQM and a function called sales development, where I was actually doing making films and merchandising and delivering training programs for sales and drawing up their entire reporting metrics and all of that, really pushed me to be completely differentiated from the rest of my peers. So in times of uncertainty, what you really need to do is look at core attributes that will help you navigate this ambiguous situation. There isn't a clear path. It's not that there are no rules that are there. There's the badminton court here, right? There are rules. You're getting into a world which has pretty much no rules. All the existing rules of success, existing rules of working in professional careers or building professional careers are falling apart. So this is the time when you step back and look at the core values, the core attributes that will help you be successful. That's acute. So, all of you are MBAs, right? You've learned analytics and you've learned a smattering of labor law and you've done OB 1, 2, 3. You've done courses in marketing, digital marketing, Philip Kotler, blah, 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 all of that, right? All of you feeling very accomplished? How many of you are not feeling accomplished? At least the second years who are going to be passing out now. Anybody who's not feeling accomplished, you think you can take on the world? Anybody thinks you can't take on the world? You have this set of skills to take on the world. Anybody who doesn't think that? Come on, I mean, people right there at the back. Do you believe you can take on the world? Yeah? Can I hear yes, no? Okay, great. In 3 years, you're going to be obsolete. And I'm not joking. Skill obsolescence is going to be your biggest worry. What you know today, the skills that you have today will not be relevant in 3 years' time. And if that doesn't scare the living daylights out of you, then I don't know what will. Because you will be obsolete. One of the biggest and one of the toughest jobs I did was in Standard Chartered. I was running what we call the General Selection Program. Standard Chartered had acquired ANZ Grindlays banks, marquee multinational banks, both doing incredibly well. ANZ Grindlays had a new CEO in Australia, decided he wanted to exit the India business. The India business was doing very well. It wasn't a distressed sale of any nature. But one CEO woke up and said, don't want to be in India. So he decided to sell ANZ. Stanchart wanted to expand its footprint in India, bought ANZ. Both organizations were about 3,500 people each. Both had almost the same number of branches, very often either across the road or juxtaposed to each other. The job that I was running was staffing the new organization, which was about 4,500 people. We let go of 2,500 people in between 2001 and 2002. In a span of 18 months, we let go 2,500 people. That was the process I ran. I was in depression, I think, for a while after that, because when you're sitting across with senior people, 45 years, 50 years, 52, 55 years old, who basically having a conversation saying, look, I mean, I don't know what to do, I'm unemployable. Nobody else will give me a job. I have daughters and sons who are in school and college and all of that. What do you want me to do? And you're saying nothing, thank you. You have security officers and you have a psychologist sitting outside your room where you're having these conversations, because reactions range the whole from complete breakdown to physical aggression. But that's not the meaningful point. How do you think we selected those 2,500 people who were let go? Why were those 2,500 people selected? Sorry? They had become obsolete. Why did they become obsolete? Yes. And what was the change that was coming in 2000, 2001? Digital? Not digitalization, but something similar. Technology, but give me a more specific word. Computers. Banking was going through computerization. So from physical ledgers, we were moving to computerized ledgers, and those ledgers were getting the biggest change. And we had unions and we had all kinds of people fighting that. The people who fought it the hardest were the people who would have said, we will not learn computer skills. We are a union and you cannot do anything and force us to learn computer skills. We will not do this. This is not right. All India whatever. There's a union in the banking, which is All India Banking Employees something, the AIBEA or something of the sort. And we had all kinds of issues. There were 400 people in one of my favorite cities, Kolkata, who were the unionized staff, who said, you know, we're not going to learn computers, and you can't sack us, because the Industrial Disputes Act prevents you from sacking people. I said, that is true. I can't force you to learn computers, and I can't sack you. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to hire a huge shed on the outskirts of Kolkata. I'm going to put carom boards, table tennis, badminton courts. It was a shed as big as this. I'm going to put a security guard and an attendance marking system, and all 400 of you are going to report there every day in the morning at 9 o'clock and be there till 5:30 in the evening. They did that for 6 months, 7 months, 8 months. Before the end of the year, each one of them had taken the VRS that we were offering and had exited. If you're not going to focus on your own growth and your own development, look at yourself as an asset. An asset needs to be able to add value. This is the last time when you're in an educational institute, when you're at gym, that you can afford to throw attitude. Because you're paying for education, right? After this, people are paying you for your services. The corporation is going to pay you for services that you provide, that are, as long as you're able to provide the services that the corporation needs. The day you are not able to provide the services that the corporation needs, you are going to be obsolete. I can't put it any more in black and white. And the way I look at learning is in a 4-quadrant approach. Quadrant 1 is time, quadrant 2 is, or axis is money. And there is company and self, and company and self. Most of us focus only on training that is done on company time and company money. But there are 3 other quadrants, which is company time, your money, company money, your time, and your time, your money. What you're doing right now is your time, your money. And I would urge each one of you, without fail, from the time that you pass out every year, spend 10% of what you earn on just investing in yourself. That is the only way you will stay current and relevant and be able to navigate the emerging world. There is no other way. It doesn't matter what you're investing in. The reality is that you could start as a marketing professional and be a data analyst and then become a robotics trainer. And you could start as an HR professional and become an algo trader in 5 years' time. Because of the level of skill obsolescence that is happening, what you study today is not going to be the bulwark or the underlying foundation of everything you do. What you're acquiring today is really learning agility. And now this keeps moving, I don't know why. But what you're acquiring today is learning agility. The ability to learn, and the ability to learn faster than others is going to be a differentiator between the best and the rest. How quickly can you learn? Does it take you a year to learn? Does it take you a month to learn? How quickly do you acquire new skills that are being required in organizations? And now it doesn't move. There you go. Time horizon. This whole framework of time horizon is rather interesting. There is a famous man who made this quote, and the quote is, human beings consistently overestimate what you're able to achieve in a year and consistently underestimate what we can achieve in 10. Who's the person? No? I mean, all of you have your phones, you could Google this. This is Bill Gates. And he's talking about this in the context of picking on projects like eradicating cholera and malaria from India and things like that. As to when you start with a 10-year horizon, what you can achieve vis-a-vis when you start with a 1-year horizon. And Professor Nagaraj mentioned sprints versus marathons in your career. Every time I join a new job, and I've done a few in my career, I start by giving myself a clear timeline as to what is the minimum amount of time I'll spend in that job, in that company. There's only once that I have, or twice in my career, when I have not kept to my own commitment, which were for reasons that sometimes you make a mistake, you don't like what you're doing, you move on. But every time I have given and played to the time horizon that I've created for myself, I found I've been generally more successful than other jobs that I've done. Why do you think that is? You know, because in every job that you do, there are some things that you can achieve in a month's effort. And there are some things that require 18 months. And there will be some things that require 3 years to achieve. If you're in HR, can you run a training program in 30 to 45 days from scratch to say, okay, I need to conduct a training needs analysis, identify the set of skills we need to train on, find trainers, construct a training program, deliver it? Done in 45 days, 60 days. Can you achieve culture change in 3 months? No. Typically 2 to 3 year window. If you are not committed to spending that 2 to 3 years in an organization, you're not going to start on the steps required to achieve something that will happen at the end of 3 years. If you are continuously looking at what are your options, and you will always get job offers, no question about it. There is a huge talent shortfall in this country. We have lots of graduates, but very few people who are skilled to do and have the ability to do the jobs that corporations want, which is why most corporations run very large training programs. But that aside, you will always get jobs. And again, please remember, what we are talking about is a set of attributes and skills that I think will help you navigate this ambiguous future. As a company and as somebody who is continuously evaluating talent and directing limited resources, saying, I'm going to invest in this person vis-a-vis this person. And no company invests in everyone equally. If anybody comes and tells you that, they are either really, really, really rich as a company, or when I make those choices, I'm obviously over-investing in people who are making impact, right? So an HR person who's able to drive culture change is incredibly valuable for me. But if you're going to shift 3 jobs in 3 years' time, I promise you're not going to drive culture change. You're not going to do anything that requires longer-term impact. You're never going to focus on and initiate the steps required to make longer-term impact. So every time you get into a job, every time you get into any new role, be clear how much time you're going to spend in that role. It could be a year, it could be 3 years. Normally, it won't be, most people will not make 5-year commitments in a role. Because when you make that commitment and you stick by that commitment, your ability to make impact is incredibly higher than the person who's not doing that. When you're saying that, look, I've taken a job, I'm going to be here in this job for 18 months. You're going to start doing things that will show results in 18 months. We are finally all input-output machines, right? You don't want to do things for somebody else, or you don't want to do things for where you're not getting returns. Time is your only resource as a professional. So if you want to be differentiated from everybody else in this room, be clear as to what are your short-term impacts you want to make, what are your medium-term impacts, and what are your longer-term impacts. The longer-term impacts, and believe me, all that impact, on short, medium, and long term, your activities will start today. Some activities will have a 30 to 60-day window to complete, and those are the sprints that Professor Nagaraj spoke about. And then there'll be medium-term things, and then there'll be longer-term things that you will deliver. All of it will start the day you join. And if you keep, to reiterate the same point, the more you keep changing and the more you kind of keep jumping around and doing that, you'll suddenly realize at the end of 7 years or 9 years that when you're sitting across being interviewed by someone like me, and I'm going to ask you the question that at 9 years you're trying to become a VP HR or whatever, or a VP in marketing, or a VP in data analytics, or a VP in sales. Tell me what have been your biggest achievements. All your achievements are going to sound really shallow. They'll all be transactional achievements. The likelihood that you would have made lasting impact in a company which positions you for the next big job is just falling down. And without overstating it, organizations are pyramids. About 15% of people make it to the next level and the next job and the next job. So if you want to be in that 15%, you have to make impact. And impact requires you to be having a clear time horizon in your mind. You know, this is so obvious that I don't really need to spend time on this. I know we are running out of time. I have about 10 minutes to wrap up. Okay, so I'm not going to spend too much time talking about emotional intelligence because it is genuinely really obvious. We are in the world of dealing with people, and you can't do it without emotional intelligence. The one fact, however, that I do want to leave with you, 99.9% of jobs in corporations don't require 1%, the top 1% of Mensa level IQ. It is not your IQ that will get you to success. You need, and all of you, given by the very fact that you're here, have already crossed that bar by a huge margin. What will define your success is your emotional quotient, your emotional intelligence. It's not your IQ, it's your EQ that from here on will determine your success. So, like I said, I don't want to spend too much time around this. And this is not moving. Okay. Let me give you a data factoid around. In the next 3-4 years, less than 1 in 20 jobs, so let me clarify, less than 1 in 20 jobs, that's less than 5% of jobs, will require either physical or manual labor or dexterity. What does that mean? Sorry? Yes, of course. Incredible levels of automation. Incredible levels of automation. But it also means that those of you who are aspiring to do jobs in which are being an analyst, how many of you are finance professionals? How many finance professionals? Can I see hands up? Okay. You know, most finance professionals till recently went in and became analysts, right? What do you think are happening to those jobs? They're disappearing. They're getting replaced. How many people in marketing? Large number. What kind of jobs are you going to do? Brand research. You're going to study consumer patterns and come up with insights on what consumer preferences are. What do you think is happening? They're getting replaced. One of the biggest jobs in media and entertainment used to be doing metadata. Hired hordes and hordes of people. Because essentially when you see on any, so today what is happening is we are all watching non-English or languages that we understand content. How many of you have watched a film that you've largely seen because of the scrolling translations at the bottom in the last 1 year? How many of you have seen those films? Japanese, Korean, Tamil, Hindi. All of us don't understand so many languages. Who do you think did that? So there would be people who would watch it and then they would write, right? Sit and write that. Now imagine the amount of content that is being produced and the number of people who are sitting and doing that. Who are sitting and translating Russian into English and Japanese into English. There are now machines that are now doing that. So there are machines that do metadata analysis or metadata writing. You put the entire script into a machine, and I'm simplifying it, but out of the other end comes a script with all kinds of, whichever language you want, natural language programming is the biggest thing that's happening. So you get language. I don't have exact statistics, but within the company, in an organization of about 3,500 people, we've let go of over 300 people because we don't need them anymore. What we do need are people who are able to combine data and information from different kinds of sources and solve that problem. Problems that are not structured, problems that cannot be solved just by looking at past patterns of data. Saying, if this has happened, apply this logic. Machines are doing that. You don't need to worry about it. So complex problems are defined as novel, ill-defined problems that require innovative solutions in the real world. So culture building, huge problem. What the consumer wants to watch, understanding consumer preference, is a complex problem. Why will, when I'm generating content, why will, for the kind of content that we do, why will Kumkum Bhagya work and not something else? Now try and solve that problem. So, and I hesitate to say this, but let me say it nonetheless. There is an increasing body of work, and in my experience, the world will belong to generalists and not specialists. Because you need to be good at different kinds of disciplines, because what we are looking for are people who are able to combine different kinds of information, different skill sets to arrive at a problem solution. If you get super specialized, then there are jobs for that, but in different domains. In the large majority of the corporate world, the focus is going to be on people who can straddle a much wider range of information, data, and complexity. So without further ado then, and when my last piece of advice to all of you, given the kind of world that you're getting into, is to learn the Serenity prayer. And the Serenity prayer is a very interesting prayer because, and I'll read it out, God grant me the serenity to accept the things I can't change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. There's no point being a Don Quixote and tilting at the windmills. There are some things that you won't be able to change. Don't try. It's a waste of your time. And focus on the things you can change. Okay, so, questions? Anybody?
You spoke about having to make very difficult decisions during your career, and could be through depression or whatever difficulties that we being future managers, we also will have to go through that transition. How would you, could you tell us about your experience about coping with that?
Okay. It did involve a lot of alcohol, I must say that. And I'm sure the professors don't like to hear that. But yes, it did involve some amount of alcohol. I don't think there is an easy answer to that, Rishi, as to how do you cope? How do you cope with dealing with large numbers of people that you're letting go, and who all, because you become the fulcrum around which they focus their entire negative energy. They know that you're not doing it, but they need to, human character is such that we all need to focus, which is why we make idols, because it helps us focus our mind. So you had Animesh Kumar, whom you could focus all your negative energy on about being sacked. There isn't one single answer. I think for me, it was a combination of two things. One was my boss, who was incredibly supportive and understanding and who stood behind me like a rock. And every time I would be on the verge of saying, hang it, I can't do this anymore, he would sit me down and counsel me and all of that. The second was really a very clinical realization that this was in the best interest of the company I worked for. It is very cold and it is very clinical, but it is what it was. That this wasn't personal vendetta, it wasn't anything that was wrong. It was the right thing to do. The company and the organization is bigger than individuals. And the relationship between organizations and individuals is one of mutual gain. It has to be win-win, it can't be win-lose. And if we had continued with those people, it would be win-lose. The individuals would win, but the organization would lose. So really, that's how I cope with that. Okay. Anybody else? Yes?
So you mentioned about how when we go out there and start earning, 10% of the earnings should be invested from ourselves. So how exactly do we do that? Is it through reading more, or what kind of things would you expect us to, invest in so as to we can build ourselves? That's one part. And the other part is, so when the company is moving into any kind of shift, like you said that people go obsolete and company has no choice but to let go of those people. So when we realize that there is a shift happening and we want to be a part of the shift, we want to make that, adapt ourselves to it, how do we do that? Is it the company's prerogative to make sure the employees do that, or is it the employees also their prerogative to, take up something? And if it is, then how do they do that?
Okay, so you're asking two questions. One, how do you deploy your 10% of your income from your own earnings to stay focused on learning? And when organizations are going through shifts, who should be doing the investment in making sure that the current population continues to be relevant and skilled? The answer to the second one is very simple. When the company is initiating change, it's always the company that is doing it. So the companies spend an awfully large amount of money on learning and development, on reskilling. And all companies are doing this. This is not unique to Z. Most good companies are spending an inordinate amount of money. 20% of my overall HR budget is being deployed in just L&D on reskilling people, because the way business is being done is changing so dramatically. So that is always a given. But companies invest in what is imminent. So if this is changing, I will invest in what is happening in the next 2 years, 3 years, like that. When it comes to being focused on your own learning and making yourself be completely ready for anything that the world can throw at you, I'm expecting that that's an answer that you will give me. Because you are the digital natives. The way learning is being delivered today is being nuggetized. So there is podcasts, there is ebooks, there is online courses, there is self-help applications that are there of all form and manner. You should be doing that search and bring it back to companies that you work in, that, hey, I've discovered a new way of learning. The fossilized leadership, people like me largely, are not really clued into what is the latest forms of learning that are happening today. So we are really dependent on the younger population, the younger workforce coming into organizations to help lead the way, to help bring that knowledge in as to how do we reinvent the way learning is being delivered in organizations, and obviously for individuals. Yep, okay. Any other questions? Nobody? Okay. Great. It was lovely meeting all of you. Thank you so much. And really enjoyed this. All the very best for your future. And go out there and change the world. That's what we expect of you. Thank you.
With these wonderful words of wisdom still ringing in our ears, we would like to thank Mr. Animesh Kumar for taking his time out and addressing us with his enlightening speech. We've all definitely learned a great deal from you today. As a token of our gratitude, I request Melinda, our Hriday JCC, to felicitate Mr. Animesh Kumar. With this, we come to a close to this session. We would like to offer our thanks to a few people without whom Anveshan would not have been possible. Firstly, we would like to thank our director, Mr. Ajit Parulekar, our PGP chair, Professor Raj Amonkar, HCM chair, Professor Arif Raza, BDA chair, Professor Anand Teldubde, and placement chair, Professor Venkatesh Naga, for their support towards Anveshan, and also our dear faculty, with a special mention to Professor Padmanabhan, for taking their time out to attend today's session. We would like to thank the management and staff, with a special mention to Mr. Steve, Mr. Hilario, and Ms. Celine, for providing us with the support to organize a national event. We would also like to thank Kanaka and Vijay for their assistance that they shall be offering on the days of Anveshan. A big thank you to the Student Advisory Council for helping us run this event smoothly. A big shout out to PR Cell and Sprockets for ever so willingly agreeing to cover Anveshan 2020. A special mention to Students Alumni Relations Cell, Brain Vista, Inception, and Health Club for their assistance, and to all other clubs and societies in GIM for their unending support. Finally, we would like to offer our thanks to you, our fellow GIM students, for being supportive and participative in all our events. Thank you everyone. Have a nice day.